Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. You're watching It Takes Two on Safia TV, Sky 847. I'm Bilal Ali Hugh, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sister Ruby So. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Sam, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. And this week we're joined by Sheikh Usama Al-Attar. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I should say Dr. Sheikh.
No worries.
Usama Al-Attar.
Thank you.
Forgive me. Good to see you again.
It's a
Sheikh.
pleasure to be here with you again.
Always
Thank
good
you.
to see you, and good to be with you all. We're going to jump straight in, make the most of the time because we have some really thought-provoking and deep questions. We'll jump to the first scenario. It's from a viewer in London. It reads, "Dear It Takes Two, I've been trying to get married for a few years now, and many people tell me that when the time is right, Allah will bring someone into my life who is best for me. However, I spoke to a brother who has written 2 books on marriage, and he has said the concept of having a soulmate does not exist within our literature. He went on to say that it's not the case that it's only one person that is right for you, but rather there can be several people who are compatible with you. How should I approach this? Do I just get on with my life and do the best and hope someone will randomly come into my life?" And it's from an anonymous viewer in London. Sister Ruby.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. In terms of, I understand what you just read, but what is the person asking? Are they asking that, should I just sit here and do nothing and pray, and then someone should, walk in the same, path as me, and then I'll know to get married? Or are they saying, do I have to be active? What is the question? Or is the person questioning what the brother said to them? I don't really understand what the issue is. He or she.
Active or passive? For the author of this letter, I think they are asking, first of all, should they be taking an active approach towards seeking a life partner, or a passive approach?
Anything in life, you have to take an active approach. Just like when you go to school, you don't just sit there and say, "Oh, maybe I'll pass the test. Let's not do any work. I'll stay in bed, and maybe someone will come upstairs and bring me my breakfast." You have to, with life, you have to live it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes with Muslims, we have this really bad idea that, we just sit on our prayer mats and, the angels are going to come with all our wants. You have to put your best foot forward. And that doesn't mean you have to, advertise it in the Evening Standard or something, but you have to, how are people going to get to know about you or who and what you are if you're not being active in the community, you're not
being visible or
they
approachable or something
don't know you.
like that?
There's how many million people in London, for example? So you've got to, with everything, you've got to make an effort. I'm not saying, put posters everywhere, but, with everything, even Islamically, the Sheikh can elaborate, is that we have to put our best foot forward. Nothing's just going to drop on your lap.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, you have trust in Allah that, if something is for you, it is for you. But how would you know if you don't make the first step? That's just my opinion.
Interesting. So Sister Ruby's saying that you don't need to walk around with a sandwich board saying, "I am single," but you need to do something. What say you, Sheikh?
Well, I agree to a certain extent, that لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. The human will not get but what he strives for. So you need to strive. That does not mean, like what she said, you go advertise. Striving could be through your manners. For example, when you show up to a certain event, even let's say girls' gatherings, ladies' majalis, centers, etc., and they see, mashallah, what a wonderful girl she is, how kind she is, etc. That's kind of a mode of striving. So I would say, yes, prayer does definitely help. We're not saying that don't pray, but at the same time, we're saying that work and pray. So try your best and pray hard, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then accept your dua and your strive and you striving, and then we'll send you the right individual.
What about this idea of advertising? We don't necessarily want to put in a paper brother or sister's name seeking marriage, but in a way you are advertising. What's your thoughts, Sheikh, if you let, brother isn't married, he lets the Imam of Salah or, somebody established in the community, and I'm actually not married, and, if you know anybody, is this okay? Is this advised? Is this dynamic enough, or is it more?
It's absolutely fine. What I actually would like to see, and I haven't seen really a strong marriage institute, something that I would like to see.
Overdue, I think. Actually.
Way overdue. And this marriage institute is not just, let's say, a marriage database, but rather it's an institute that can, includes, let's say, a religious or several religious scholars. It includes psychologists, includes a social worker or like several social workers, includes maybe physicians, who can come into this marriage institute, and it's from an Islamic perspective. So people who have these issues, these kind of issues, they actually come, they discuss them with, they get the religious perspective, they get the psychological perspective, counselors, social workers, etc., who then provide a complete package for the hopefully, but the best solution to their social needs, to their marriage problems. At the same time, one of the functions of this marriage institute is basically to find suitable matches.
Is an element as well.
Yes, it's not just a database, but rather this is more kind of, you meet the person, you see that the lady or the man, and see what kind of what things he likes, what things she wants, and then you'll kind of make a match on that basis. We're way overdue for something like this, and I think if we actually look into establishing something like this, it may be even possible that you can get some government funding, because it's a social institute that can cater to the social needs. There are millions of Muslims living in the United Kingdom. So you can really build a good case for it, even at the governmental level.
You pay taxes, so why not?
Yeah.
I think the person who wrote this letter, what they need to understand is, in our community we have a problem. We have a problem with a lot of people wanting to get married, who are generally ready to get married now, this moment, who can't. And then on the flip side, we have people who, think they have all the time in the world, and then when they wake up, there's actually no one around, because guess what, like university, when you graduate, people want to employ the new grads, not the person who's graduated 3 years ago. So you're in a situation where you're like a salmon swimming upstream. So if you're in an opportunity where you can get married and you can socialize and meet people, then I would grab that with two hands, because there's always going to be someone who's prettier, more intelligent, or whatever, and you will find even outside the Muslim community that there is a phenomena that people cannot find partners. People who want to have stable relationships just can't, and it's not because they're not trying. There's just, there's too many fish to choose from. So you're going to go down in the pecking order. So put yourself out there. It's a blessing to get married. And if you're in a position where you can get involved in the community, or you have some good friends that can, privately put the word out for you, do it. Grab it with both hands, because there's so many people in the line wanting to get married. Forget the poor people who are divorced or widowed or never been married,
Interesting. I want to go back to your institute. I like your institute.
I'm glad I like
curiosity. You sold it to me.
Awesome. Good. Let's work on it.
Recently watching a program on television, and it was about marriage, and they were psychologists and family members and a number of people that came together and helped these people to get married, and they never met each other until the day of their marriage. So it's a bit of a social experiment, so to speak. But I guess that happened in the Muslim world, or does still, to a certain degree. Do you think the trend is changing, or where people want to meet and almost court in a halal way, as opposed to just trusting their family? Say, my dad knows me, you hook me up with a wife, I'm going to leave it in my dad's hands.
Oh Lord.
That's quite an interesting, I think when you ask people this question, different people will give you different answers. Okay, so some will kind of, vow that traditional marriages are the best marriages. They'll cite several examples where people say, I never met my wife, I saw her maybe once, I spoke to her once, and we've been married for 10 years now, for example, or 5 years now, and we're so happy. So you'll have people who will vow, by that traditional marriage.
Yeah.
And you'll have individuals who will say, that's no way, how can you meet someone, marry someone whom you've never met? You don't even know what she likes, what he likes. So how can I get in a marriage relationship without even knowing anything about this person?
And live with them for 60 years. People are living to 80s and 90s. So, can you imagine?
So
sounds exciting.
It's difficult for me to say, this is right or this is wrong or this is wrong or this is right. Definitely, both of them have some merits. We do have, until this day and age, people who are getting married in a traditional manner, and I know many people who, mashallah, have a very happy life, and who got married in a traditional way, where they maybe met their wife once for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And after that conversation, they realized this is the individual whom they want to marry, and she realized this is the man whom she wants to marry, and mashallah, they've been married for a while. I've also met individuals who are very happy, who met their partners, let's say at the university or at work, and they kind of knew each other, that very nice person, and the chemistries worked out, so then they approached again the parents, and they had that marriage, and very nice and very happy and successful. So I wouldn't say the ups and downs here.
Okay.
What I would like to point out, though, is in North America, 50% of the marriages are ending up in divorce. Okay. And this rate, or this statistics, is among people, let's say, who may have lived together for even 5 years, 6 years, in a kind of a relationship, and then they decide to get married, and then 2-3 years later they end up divorcing.
Strange phenomena.
So my argument here then comes as, how much do you really need to know the person before getting married? And does really knowing that individual before marriage safeguard the marriage? I mean, here we have a case where people sometimes live together for 2-3 years. I mean, how much more would you want to know the person? And then still they get married. And of course, I'm not talking from the religious point of view here. Of course, religiously there could be a problem with this issue. But we're talking about we're talking
secular
about
people. Yeah.
We're talking about here people who live together. So I mean, you know each other really well. You've lived together for 2, 3, 5 years, and now you get married, and then 2-3 years later, you're divorcing. So does the concept of me knowing this partner so well, is it really then going to guarantee a happy marriage? And I guess the answer is not really, because 50% divorce rate is quite a high rate. But I don't know, Sister Ruby, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it could be a situation of maybe instead of knowing the other person, do you know yourself? Do you feel that you're stable enough at 20 to continue when you're 30 because you don't really know yourself? I mean, people fluctuate. We've got to understand that people change. You're not the same, not everybody's the same person they were when they were 16 or 18. Maybe,
true.
Sometimes, and I would agree that you get to know somebody and you get to know them very well.
Well,
and
can't you
think,
grow together?
Yeah, but sometimes
as you evolve,
grow
like as a
together
couple,
and
you evolve.
find out really...
Or you grow apart.
Exactly. You grow apart. That we're good as friends, but I want more, or this is not what I want, or I need to work on myself this way. And I'm not, maybe it's a Western thing, but when you look at people, say my grandmother generation, they never saw each other until they got married. And my thing to them was, well, you didn't have a choice. You're in a different era. There was no divorce. You didn't even have to like each other. You could, continue. And maybe you had nowhere to go back to. But now we're in a situation where everything is fixable. But I think it's really important, if we're talking about Marriage Institute, is really defining, is the person comfortable in their own skin? What are they looking for in a marriage? Are they trying to escape? Is it something that they think will fix their life? They're moving on to a better, economically, they're moving on to something better. Before we even talk about, Brother John is over there, what do you think of him? I think we need to prepare our youngsters and the next generation to be comfortable.
So that could be part of the institute, where we have a section for self-discovery.
See, this is the thing,
and
though.
vetting.
So, like Islamically, couples are encouraged to get married at a younger age. And maybe it's because of that molding that you talked about, you know, because maybe at that age you're kind of easier for you, I guess, to mold your lives together, kind of adapt to each other. You're still young, you know, your career is not gelled yet, so hopefully you can kind of mold together. So Islamically, we are encouraged to get married at a younger age. Of course, that maturity factor is there. But it's you know, unfortunately, it's not a factor that you can really gauge. It has like, oh, he's now past the maturity. Now, yeah.
I think we do some psychological testing
right.
when they come in.
I mean, I've heard parents, for example, who tell me that, you know, my son, you know, I got him married, let's say, at the age of 20. And yes, he was a good kid and things, but of course, being a boy at the age of 20, now that he got married, though, he's a completely different person. I find him a lot more responsible, a lot, you know, he takes care of his wife and things like this. And I've heard the same thing about, you know, girls as well. So sometimes, I guess, the maturity is there definitely, but marriage in some people adds to their maturity.
Yeah,
maybe they understand
they step up.
Yeah, they realize there's a responsibility here. So, and that's where I go back to the verse where it says, Allah says, and get, you know, the people whom you have rights over, your children or people, adopted children, etc. Get them married, and if they are poor, God will increase them of His wealth. And poor here may not necessarily mean the financial poverty, could be the emotional poverty. So they're lacking emotional poverty, you know, if they're needing further emotional help, spiritual help, responsibility help, God will enrich that component as well.
Sister Ruby, the individual that wrote this letter mentioned about soulmates are not in our literature, but what is the current sort of dynamic with the young sisters with this concept of soulmate? Not. So we're not trying to say is it. We'll get to the Sheikh.
I think, you know, the dynamics of young sisters, they're so varied. You have, of course, your sisters who, you know, really bought into the Walt Disney thing. You know, that, you know, you strive and you find your Prince Charming, and then you live happily ever after. And they find out, well, oh, actually, it's not like that. Then you have other sisters who are, you know, looking at their grandparents and their parents, who is just, you put up, to the stage that you don't even recognize your friend anymore because she's in a new situation and she's, you know, making choices for her life. So it's so varied. This is what I'm saying. I think it's time in our community that we have a good, honest chat with brothers and sisters, and there needs to be like almost like a mentor kind of program where people tell you what actually marriage is about. Like, you might wake up and the person really annoys you because they snore, but you know what, you're just gonna have to, you know, is it worth getting a divorce over? We need some real talking people, not this thing that, you know, you have your infallibles and they had the most perfect marriage and mashallah. We need things like people who actually lived, worked, breathed, were humans, you know, made errors. We need some people who actually talk, because even when you go to married couples, they'll give you the alhamdulillah, everything's great. And then you're thinking, well, he hasn't bought the loaf of bread. I'm a bit angry. Is there something wrong with me? So we need people to talk to us about what marriage is really like, that it takes work. That's my opinion.
Okay. Sheikh, what's the concept of, because this keeps circulating, this thing of the soulmates. How do we see this in our religion?
I don't know if that's actually an Islamic concept, you know, the concept of soulmate. You know, yes, you put in your effort, you try your best, and we've had cases, you know, many brothers who would want to get married. They, for example, talk to one girl, doesn't work out, try to another girl, doesn't work out. Maybe after 3-4, you know, individuals, they find the right person whom they click with, and they get married. So I don't know if it's, we can call it the soulmate. Basically, it's the natural process that you discuss with the individual whom you may want to consider as a potential partner, a spouse. And if he or she is the right person, then great, move forward.
I think your soul can be attracted to so many different people, but it doesn't mean you want to marry them. I might be attracted to my friend because, you know, she's a really good sister and she could be the sister I never had, or that brother really reminds me of a brother I wish I had, but I don't want to marry them. I think it's a comforting thought to say that we have a soulmate.
Now, I would like to add something to what Sister Ruby just mentioned. It's quite interesting there. There is this kind of psychology there of the personality type.
That's what I was thinking.
The personality type. You know,
extrovert,
you have
introvert,
the introvert. You know, that Carl Jung. You know, for example, with his kind of personality type indicators. And so you may have an individual, and I've had this case actually happen in the past, where the husband is an extrovert, the wife is an introvert. Now they go out together, for example, to meet, you know, a family. So the wife, of course, being an introvert, she finds she's been bombarded by so much information. When they come back home, she just wants to go in the room, close the door, and just basically recharge. And the husband would be like, wait a minute, we're just talking to people out there. Why don't you talk to me anymore? And I don't think he realizes that, you know, she just needs a few minutes, like half an hour for her just to kind of recharge herself. So I think having that understanding out there is important. And that's the Marriage Institute I was talking about.
Okay, the personality type, intriguing. We're going to jump to our next letter, and it reads, Dear ItTakes2, I'm constantly struggling with feelings of despair when it comes to marriage. I've been trying to get married for several years now. I've spoken to a few sisters here and there, but it's never reached any serious stage. I've been searching myself, asking family, friends, matchmakers. I've even considered doing temporary marriage to fulfill my spiritual, emotional and physical needs with a pious sister. But even then, I'm not getting anything. I've even gone as far as looking for someone decent on dating apps. Of course, I only took the step after consulting close friends and taking an istikhara. I constantly ask Allah to give me what's best for me in this world and in the hereafter. I can appreciate that Allah is looking after me, but it's hard to feel content to the extent that I can sincerely say Alhamdulillah with all my heart. Alhamdulillah, I'm not sinning, but this is still taking a lot of energy out of me to the point where I feel like I'm not able to carry out as many tasks as I want to throughout the day. Please advise. And it's from an anonymous individual in London. Very, very complex letter, really. Number of questions come up. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about, Sheikh, is this concept, funny enough, about the dating app, the permissibility or certain types or the complexities of that.
You know, to think of these matchmaking websites or matchmaking apps, they could be a bit more complex. You know, sometimes if I were to think of, let's say, an Islamic cultural perspective, and I would take the word actually Islamic out here, from a cultural perspective, there are certain cultures where, let's say the husband, for example, or potential husband may be interested in a girl, and he may approach her for marriage, and things might be working out, and then you know, a friend or someone comes up to him, and could be, you know, genuine, I'm not saying in a malicious way, and say, oh, by the way, do you know this girl actually has a profile on this matchmaking website? And he might take it in a very offensive way. I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, but I'm saying this is out there in some cultural mindsets. So it could work for you or against you. That's why I really like the idea. I go back to it again, the Marriage Institute. In a Marriage Institute, you have a database. In this case, it's not just a profile where you as an individual go through the different profiles and oh, I think I like her. No, now you have a database. And there are individuals who, based on their interview with each and every, you know, individual, and the interview does not have to be a physical interview, could be over Skype, for example, and then they kind of have an idea about who this individual is, what he or she likes, and therefore they can make the potential, you know, matchmaking. So that is a more preference of mine versus, for example, having this matchmaking website where you keep different profiles and people just, you know, screen through them and say, well, let me try this, let me try that.
Well, I'm just thinking, who would I sue if it didn't work out in the Marriage Institute? Because a lot of the times, you know, in our community, something goes wrong, they go straight to the person who introduced the person and say, well, you didn't tell us that this person was X, Y, and Z. So I'm just thinking from a legal perspective, we'll need lawyers.
No, that's not a disclaimer. That's part
of the disclaimer. I mean, obviously, all you're doing is you're introducing them. And then they have to do their homework, they have to do their research. I mean, just like, they need to talk to each other, and then they make the decision to get married. The marriage institute does not force anyone to do it.
It's just an introduction. It's just a network.
I think in 2016, especially in the Shia community, we are so small. And unfortunately, we're still in our cultural cliques and where are you from and what street did your parents grow up in. We still haven't moved on from that. And we have, young people and, older people and people who have become Muslim who have a completely different experience and who have human needs. So I think I know some friends who've got married through matchmaking sites, and it's worked out perfectly. I know some people who got married the traditional way, your parent knows this one, and it's worked out terribly. I just think I think every one of us has a responsibility, if we know some people who aren't married and stuff, to bring people together. And we really need to get away from, because I'm sure if you ask this person, there are people that you can marry. Let's just cut the chase. But people want, do you make 401k a year? What car do you drive? Have you been married before? Do you have children?
But people have a right to their own,
They do, but the problem is nobody's getting married now. And the ones who are, they're miserable and looking at other people and thinking, I wish I was single. And the ones who are single are looking at people who are married and saying, I wish I was married. So I think really we're becoming really picky. And it's okay to have preferences. But if you're 40 years old and you're looking for and you've never been married and you're looking for someone who's never been married and has no children, is that really realistic if you're a female in the West? Is it really realistic?
It's not likely.
So I think we need to kind of manage our expectations.
The expectations. But I would beg to differ here from the idea that people who are married are miserable and they would prefer to be. Not all
some
of them.
Exactly, there are good marriages.
That's
definitely.
Right, exactly.
We just want to emphasize that we don't want to put people up from marriage.
Some beautiful marriages.
I wouldn't generalize here, and I think the expectations are to be there. But I like what the sister said. I guess it goes back to kind of essential kind of tool. They say the best tool for marketing is word of mouth. And here, I guess, now I don't want to use that word, as an analogy, it's just to draw, as an example, but word of mouth, and that's where everyone is responsible. And I would take the Prophet's hadith, where each and every one of you is responsible, and you need to take care of the community that you're responsible for. That community could be, your company, could be your house, could be your children, could be your spouse, could be your community at large, and so on and so forth. Could be these individuals who would like to get married. So yes, if I come across an individual whom I think is a really suitable candidate for a friend of mine, then let me go and tell him about it or tell her about it, so that hopefully something can work out.
Sheikh, what about this? Because Ruby mentioned something that was really important, that people have psychological, spiritual, all different needs. What about some people who the possibility or permissibility of muta exists, but at the same time some people think, no, I want to save myself for a permanent marriage. Is this something that's encouraged, discouraged, problematic? Is it okay? Because this is something that keeps implicitly coming up in many of the inquiries that we get.
Okay, so with regards to mut'a, which is basically a marriage, it's a temporary marriage. First of all, it is something that is based on the Quran. Okay, so the Quran talks about it. So we cannot just say that, it's not out there and it's a taboo. It's based on the Quran. The Ahlul Bayt talk about it. The books of laws discuss it, and so therefore it's there. Now, when some people abuse it, that does not mean that the law itself is wrong and we need to throw it out of the window. But some people, unfortunately, don't respect it as a marriage the way it should be respected, just like any other marriage, whether it's temporary or it's permanent. I mean, it's a contract, so that needs to be respected and adhered to. It has certain limitations. It has certain conditions. And people need to understand what these conditions are, what these limitations are, and follow along with them. If they choose to perform it, it is a marriage. So we cannot look down upon people who perform mut'a. It's a marriage, and if they choose not to, again, that's a decision they choose to make. It's just like someone saying, I choose not to get married. I should not be looking down at a person who says, I'm not going to get married. You know, that's the decision he or she is making. And now at the same time, if he or she chooses to get married, you know, I should not also be looking down at them. Why are you getting married? This is a marriage.
Choice.
Just go back to the muta question. Just off the record, there is a taboo in our community about muta because there are certain connotations that come with it. And the problem is, if you're a girl and you partake in a muta, whether your parents agree, say you've never been married, and whatever's the situation, there is this secret taboo that it's not a nice thing to do if you're a girl, because it's almost expected, unfortunately, that for men it's okay if they're in a muta. But if you're a girl and you're looking for a permanent marriage and you've been in a muta and a physical relationship afterwards, there is a kind of stereotype that there is. And, you know, to pretend that doesn't exist in our community would be an insult to our viewers' intelligence. I'm not saying it's correct, but there is this connotation about it. And I think, you know, especially for young people and young girls who, you know, have urges or whatever, you need to be mindful of this, because at the time it might look like a great idea and that you're going to end up with this person. Mm-hmm. But remember, it's a contractual agreement, time specified. So, you know, if one person leaves the relationship, you are left with that. You've now been in a relationship. And, you know, when it comes to, I've known a lot of sisters who, you know, are now wondering, do they tell their prospective husbands that they've been in a relationship before or not? Or, you know, there's other questions. Do you need to tell them everything? How would he take it? And I think this is something that we also need to discuss. There's pros and there's cons.
There's absolutely pros and cons. We're rapidly running out of time, but I just want to say a couple of things before I ask the Sheikh to close. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we have to bear in mind is like think about it psychologically, that, you know, Allah has created human beings, mm-hmm. and He's created us in the best form and fashion, and He's given us the laws that, you know, fit our mental makeup as well as our emotional makeup. So it's interesting that we're getting more and more social problems and problems to do with divorce and problems to do with zina, stuff and different problems like this, because the taboo is gaining so much ground. So Islam is saying one thing, but Muslims, if we want to think we know better than Allah, we're going to taboo a woman because she's been in a muta.
But can I say something about that though? That not just with temporary marriage. Even if, let's say, a woman, unfortunately, I would like to kind of agree with what you're saying, but I want to push it even further. Even if a woman gets in a permanent marriage and then she gets divorced, I mean, our culture, unfortunately, is not very merciful,
empathic
with her. You know, people don't like to get married to a divorced woman, even if she's been through a permanent marriage. And that's one thing that the Prophet himself challenged. That's why you find him, for example, marrying a lot of divorcee, a lot of widows, so that he wants to, you know, in action tell people, you know what, this is not a taboo. You know, you guys these are normal women. They have needs, and they can be great spouses. So I would like to respond to that. It's not just with the temporary marriage, even with the permanent marriage, unfortunately.
Jazakallah, Sheikh, thank you so much for your time and for your words. Sister Ruby, as always, thank you so much for your words and your dynamic energy. And thank you all for staying with us for the duration of It Takes Two. And we hope that we're providing some food for thought and some solutions to help you live together and love more. And hope to see you next time. Until then, remember to stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.